This is your one and only 𝐈𝐸𝐻81 with your daily dose of video goodness, and today we are going to talk about boosting your damage in Elden Ring. Let's get to it. So I want to start off with the basics here, and that is in the form of some talisman setups that you can run depending on what build you're running, and then we'll get into some more convoluted stuff and ways that you can combine different buffs to boost your damage even more. So if you're playing a mage and you want to get the absolute max damage that you can, the starting of that setup would look something like this. You would have both of these talismans equipped and then the magic scorpion charm. This is going to give you an absolute massive boost to anything that you cast. And in this last slot, you have a little bit of wiggle room. So you could run something like the Radagon icon, which is going to shorten your casting time, essentially giving you higher DPS. Or you could run something like the Godfrey icon if you're running a bunch of spells that are charge spells. But my personal favorite is the Ritual Sword Talisman. Now this one kind of sucks because you have to be max HP at all times in order for this to work. So if you do take a hit, you got to drink your health pot in order to make sure that you're staying at max health so that this talisman is actually working. But the damage that this one puts off is kind of insane. So I want to show you my base damage here. We're going to use a charged spell. So we'll use the Glintstone Comet Shard. Now I have all of these active and we will charge shoot this guy right here. You can see we did 1,210 damage. So now we're going to swap over here to the Godfrey icon, and then we are going to shoot this guy. Once again, charge spell. There you go, 1,394. Now we're going to swap over to the Ritual Sword Talisman, and we're going to shoot this guy, full charge, 1,332. So we lose a little bit of damage on fully charged spells by using the Ritual Sword Talisman, but in order to get the full effect of the Godfrey icon, you have to always be fully charging your spells, and the loss of damage isn't too significant. So they both have a little bit of give and take there, but they're both solid options for that last slot if you're playing a caster. Now you do have one other option for this slot, but it doesn't have anything to do with boosting damage. It kind of has to do with saving your butt, and it offsets the Scorpion Charm Talisman, and that is running one of these. You can see over there how much it's going to boost what I got going on. So this is my defenses right now because this talisman actually will lower them over here, and you can see that happen. If I unequip it, you can see our physical bumps up to 15, and if we come back over and equip it, we drop down to 7. But if we go over here and we equip this, we'll get 25, and at this one we get 22. So either one of these is going to be good. Our magic damage is still relatively good over there, but we could boost that even more by using something like that. Or not magic damage, our magic defense is pretty good, but we could boost that a little more with something like this. But these give you such a good boost to your damage negation over here because the way that they are added, they have diminishing returns. So you're going to see them be more useful when your damage negation is lower. I know that doesn't have anything to do with boosting damage, but I still wanted to touch on it. If you are playing a build that relies heavily on incantation casting, we're going to start out with this. So you're going to have these two together. That's going to give you a huge boost to your incantations. And then you're going to follow up with one of the other scorpion charms or two, depending on what you are casting. If you got a lot of fire going on, you're going to use the fire one. Lightning, you're going to use the lightning. And holy, you're going to use the sacred one. It's all going to depend on what you got going on. In your last slot, it's going to be a similar situation. You're going to want to run the Ritual Sword Talisman or possibly the Godfrey icon if you're charging a lot, or the Radagon icon will also do the same thing and shorten your casting time. It says spells, but it works for both your sorceries and incantations. All right, now that we've talked about some of the basic stuff, let's get into some of the more complex, a little bit more convoluted ways to boost your damage. These are, like I said, a bit more complex and convoluted. However, they can give you huge boosts to your damage. So the first combo I want to get into is combining the white mask, which you see I have on now, or the mushroom crown, with the Kindred of Rot's exaltation and the Lord of Blood's exaltation. So these together, each one of these, when they proc, they give you 20%. So if you just proc a poison or rot in an area, this will give you 20%. Lord of Blood's Exaltation will do the same thing. If you bleed something, you proc a blood loss on a target, this will give you a 20% boost to your damage. It is possible to proc both of these at the same time, getting a total of 40% increase to your damage. The White Mask or the Mushroom Helmet, whichever you prefer to wear. The Mushroom Helmet's going to give you the boost in damage when you proc a rot or poison effect, and this is going to give you a boost in damage when you proc a bleed effect. Wearing these three together and proccing a poison effect along with a bleed effect at the same time is going to give you a 50% damage boost. Yeah, that's kind of nuts. That is a big boost to your damage. So how do you manage to pull this off? Well, you can pull it off with 1 or 2 weapons depending on how you want to do your setup. It is possible to get a weapon that poisons and bleeds at the same time. As you see here, this has seppuku on it, the Ash of War seppuku right here. If I stab myself for a short period of time, this will have the bleed effect on it. And I use the affinity poison, giving it the ability to poison the target. So poison is going to be its passive ability. When I activate seppuku, it will gain the bleed ability, and I can proc both at the same time. If the item natively has bleed, it is possible to put an Ash of War on there, a lot of different Ash of War. So like we could do Bloodhound Step, we could do that in poison, and now this has poison and bleed on it at the same time. So I'm going to attempt to show you how much you can increase your damage here. It can get a little finicky at times to manage to pull this off in a way that actually demonstrates it, but we got these giants here. If I hit this giant with a Glintstone Pebble, you can see we did 489 damage. So now we're going to walk up here. We're going to try to proc both our spells here, or both our things. So there we got poison, there we got bleed. All right, so now let's manage to get off this guy here. And we are going to aim for this one while we have both of the buffs, and you can see there we did 775. So there, that was our increase there. I've already forgotten the first number that we hit for, but when we have both of them, it was 775. Here we go. Now that we have it off, you can see 489. So we gained quite a large damage boost having all three of those active at the same time. And while it is easiest to rely on melee to activate all of those buffs at the same time, it does affect your spells as well as your melee damage, as you saw there. Now let's talk about stacking a bunch of other active buffs that you have to keep applying to yourself instead of just attacking. One thing I like about that 50% increase combo is that you just play. You do your thing, you attack things, and it just procs over and over and over again, and you don't really have to worry about it. But there are a lot of active buffs that you can keep up on yourself to give yourself an absolute massive boost to your damage. First off, we have Flame Grant Me Strength, which is an incantation that's going to give you a boost to your fire and physical damage. Then we have the Commander's Standard Ash of War Rallying Standard, which will boost your damage overall. It's basically a buffed up version of Golden Vow, and we'll talk about that here in a second. And that is because you can't stack it. This is one of the few that don't stack with Golden Vow, but you can stack Flame Grant Me Strength and Commander Standard together, or you can stack Flame Grant Me Strength and Golden Vow together. This will give you a huge boost to your damage, the two of these stacked together like this. So I'm going to let these run off. We're going to run out here, and we're just going to hit the troll out there with nothing active. Now, I do want to point out that you don't need this weapon to cast Golden Vow. Golden Vow is an incantation that you can get just normally and cast it the same as Flame Grant Me Strength. However, I cannot use that incantation with my current build. I'm trying to show you all of this stuff on one build, and it's just not able to do all of the things. However, I can cast Golden Vow using this halberd and just skipping the whole incantation. However, it's the exact same as the incantation itself. They've just moved the incantation to this halberd as an Ash of War. So if we run out here and we slap this guy here with none of these buffs active, we're just going to give him a little tap. You can see 204 damage. Our damage is abysmal with this thing. It's not upgraded or anything like that, but that doesn't matter. You can still see the buffs in effect. Let's now pretend that we are going to use the Golden Vow incantation on ourselves. Okay, there we go. We just used the Golden Vow incantation and not the Golden Vow Ash of War. And now we're going to run out here and we're going to slap this guy. So we went up to 212. Now what we're going to do is we are going to cast Golden Vow and then we are going to cast Flame Grant Me Strength. Now we're going to run out here and give this guy a little love tap. And you can see we did 261. That's a huge increase in damage. Now that's a percentage increase. So if we were using something that is going to hit a lot harder, we are going to do a lot more damage. So let me attempt to show you that here. We don't have to use this weapon. We don't have to have it out once I've cast Golden Vow. It is on me. Same thing with Flame Grant Me Strength. We're going to cast that as well. Then we're going to swap over to this with both of these buffs active and we're going to come out here. This scales with my intelligence. I'm an intelligence character, so 724. It's a pretty big chunk of damage there. Now what's really interesting about those two buffs is those also stack with Royal Knight's Resolve, which is a buff that gives you a one-hit huge damage boost. It's like an 80% increase in damage, but that stacks with all of these other buffs. You can see I have that on my weapon here. You just do this real quick and then it's a glowy weapon and then you do a strike and then that's it. The buff goes away, but you get a really huge hit. This is really great for melee characters. There is a baby version of Royal Knight's Resolve called Determination. It essentially does the same thing. It's just not as big of a damage boost. So let's proc our Golden Vow. Let's proc our Flame Grant Me Strength. We're going to swap over to this and we're going to run out here. We're going to proc it real quick and then we're going to hit this guy 1,303 damage. So before we did like 700 and some change and then we just did 1,300 and some change. Now, as I stated before, you cannot use Commander Standard and Golden Vow at the same time. They will overwrite each other. So if we cast Golden Vow here, and we swap over to this and we cast the Commander Standard, you can see they all just went away and we get this buff instead. This buff will give you more damage, but does not last as long as Golden Vow does. So we did 1303 with that setup before. Let's swap over and use the Commander Standard instead. So we'll use Commander Standard, then we will activate Flame Grant Me Strength, and then we will swap over to this and we will run up on this guy, cast Royal Knights and hit him 1487. So you can see it's a much bigger damage bonus there, but the Commander Standard does not last as long. Now, another solid option that you can combine with a lot of these different buffs is the buff from the Jellyfish. So you can see we have the Contagious Fury. It's going to get you a pretty big damage boost on your melee attacks as well as spell attacks. So if we had a staff in this hand, I could cast spells and activate this and get a boost to my spell damage as well. A lot of mage builds use this. So we did 616 there with nothing active. Now we're just going to run out here and we are going to activate this and then we are going to give him a little pokey poke. So we were at 616 and now we give him a poke and we did 740. That's a pretty big damage boost. Now it is possible to stack the Rallying Standard from the Commander Standard and Golden Vow with the buff from the Jellyfish shield. So if I just run out here and we hit this guy with just the Jellyfish shield active, you can see we do 785. If we swap over to our Golden Vow incantation, and I say that with quotation marks, the air quotes incantation, and then we swap over to Contagious Fury, and we activate them at the same time, and we come out here and we hit this guy. You can see we did 825. So we got a pretty big damage increase there, and that shows you that they stack. And you can do the same thing with the Rallying Standard from the Commander Standard. Now, what is really interesting is all of these active buffs that I just showed you will stack with the kind of passive buffs that you get from the White Mask, Mushroom Helmet, and Exaltation's Talisman's combo that I showed you before. So if, for example, you are running around, you can activate the Contagious Fury or the Golden Vow and have that active and get the damage bonus from that. And then anytime you proc blood or bleed, you will also get an additional 50% bonus on top of the bonus that you're getting from having these more active buffs up and running. Now keep in mind that this is all subject to diminishing returns, so the more you just keep buffing yourself and the higher percentage increased damage you're going to get, you're not going to start to see as big of increase in damage when you start really stacking a ton of these buffs together, but you will see an increase in damage. Now the last thing I want to cover here is buffing your weapon specifically, because there are some things you can do to buff your weapon specifically. And in order to do that, in most cases, you can't have any type of special weapon, and if you have an Ash of War, you need to make sure that that Ash of War does not have any type of affinity. So we're just going to come up here and we're going to do a standard Ash of War on this. Now if I come over here to my spells, and we'll just remove a bunch of these spells so we have some other options here, and we come over to our supportive sorceries, you can see I have Frozen Armament and Scholar's Armament. So we're just going to grab Scholar's Armament for that one, and we come over here to our supportive incantations, and you can see we have Black Flame and the Blood Flame. There's also Poison, and there's Electrify as well. All of these will add different effects, giving you some type of boost in your damage, especially if something is very susceptible to a specific type of damage. For example, heavily armored targets are usually susceptible to electrify or lightning attacks. We also have Order's Blade, which gives your weapon holy damage, which you can use against undead things that like to resurrect, like skeletons. If you have this on your armament and you hit a skeleton, not only are you going to do bonus damage, but you're also going to kill it in one kill. So out of all of these, this one's going to be the easiest one for me to show you the damage increase here and stacking it with other stuff. So I'm just going to use this one as our test spell. So if I cast Scholar's Armament on this thing and we run out here and we hit the target, you can see we hit for 663 damage. And I do want to point out that I have Royal Knight's Resolve on here, but you cannot activate Royal Knights along with any other type of effect on your weapon. So if I cast this on my weapon and give it its damage boost or its magic damage, and then I cast Royal Knights and we wait for just a second for Royal Knights to wear off, it doesn't last very long, don't worry. You can see that we've lost our Scholar's Armament buff on there. However, we can buff it with Scholar's Armament, and then we could swap over to something like the Jellyfish Shield, and we can activate the Jellyfish Shield, and that's going to give us a boost on top of our Scholar's Armament, and we come out here and hit the target, and we're doing 795. We can also pop a Flame Grant Me Strength and then swap over to the Jellyfish Shield and proc that as well, and then run out here and hit this guy. And you can see we're doing 873. So all of these other like little side buffs will stack with your weapon as long as you're not doing something that's applying an effect to your weapon. So all of these little side buffs, all of the talismans, all of that will stack with the bonus damage that you're getting from using something like Scholar's Armament or Electrify Weapon or something like that. Okay, well, I think that's pretty much it for this one. I babbled on long enough. Hopefully you found some helpful information in here. I just wanted to kind of tell people about, because I know we've seen a lot of like random videos where people combine different things together, but I kind of wanted to like group it all in one video so that you can see easily what buffs work together, what doesn't work together, and different ways to boost your damage so that you can maybe incorporate some of these into your build if you haven't already. So hopefully you found it helpful and informational. If you did, consider hitting the subscribe button and notification bell so you can be notified when I upload other videos. I want to get an absolute massive shout out and thank you to my supporters on Patreon for making this episode possible. Y'all are absolutely amazing people. If you would like to join my elite crew of Patreon supporters, please check out the link in the description below. If you enjoyed this video, please leave a comment down below. Let me know what you thought. If you're shy, you don't like to comment, just hit that thumbs up button and show your support. Until next time, thanks for watching.